Hello there. It is Friday. I already need to cough. It's not a cough, it's just morning. It is 10 to 12. This is the second earliest I've been out of bed all week. Third earliest? I might have managed a bit earlier on Monday. Anyway, the reason this is one of the earliest times I've managed to get up this week is that, so when, I don't actually recall if I mentioned when I streamed on Tuesday. I think not, because I think I was still powering ahead defiantly at that point. So I'd started to have worse pain on Monday, so I'm always in pain. And if we're going to use I hate the out of 10 score, but just illustratively, if we're going to use an out of 10 score, I'm generally a 3 out of 10 at all times. It fluctuates a bit, but that's my average. And on Monday that started creeping up. It didn't get super high, it got to like a 5. And it stayed there through Monday and through Tuesday. And on Tuesday I did all of those things, because I did my reading group, and then this, and then I went to a talk that my supervisor was giving, which was amazing, by the way. And I now understand all of the advice she's given me, why she has seemed so passionate about it. And it's because we seem to have very similar approaches to things and how we think about stuff. So I haven't got rid of the second me yet today. There we go. So I did all of those things, and I stopped those things, and I went, oh god, I am in so much pain. I went to bed and discovered the Great British Sewing Bee, which was great. And it was really great, because it was really what I needed at that point, was something particularly wholesome and comforting, but interesting enough that I wanted to keep watching it, so I forgot that the hours were passing. It was good. And when I woke up on Wednesday, I was in a lot more pain, and Wednesday was awful, and then Thursday I was still in pain. So Wednesday was the worst day, definitely, by far the worst day. I had a point on, might have been Tuesday night actually, where I needed to go to the bathroom. The bathroom is right next to our bedroom, so it's 10 steps. And by the time I got back into the bed, I was in so much pain, I was shaking. Like I'd been overheating, because I'd been in my heated blanket. I was in my heated blanket in my reading group. That's how much I needed the blanket. I looked so ridiculous. I think that I did talk about. But yeah, so I was shaking, sobbing, because I was just in so much pain. And so I got to yesterday and went, oh god, I'm meant to be going to work today and to study and to mentoring, and I got myself up and limped my way to here with my stick, which I couldn't walk properly until very late last night. After I had a bath last night, actually, was when it really started to drop off. I'm still in more pain than normal right now. But as you can see, I'm at a point where I can function in a slightly better way. Basically because this, like, I'm probably at a 5 out of 10 now, but that seems so nice in comparison to what I was at. So, yeah. I got to mentoring and I looked like crap, and I think my mentor could probably tell as soon as my video went on that something was wrong. So my mentor also has fibromyalgia, so as soon as I said I was flaring, she went, okay, but when did it start? How bad is it? What's going on? So we talked through it, and I talked about like all of the stuff I was now panicking about, like, oh god, I haven't written anything on my dissertation in a week and a half. I did like the stuff on Tuesday, but that's all optional. I haven't done anything on my dissertation. I'm gonna fail. I'm not gonna get into my PhD, blah, blah. Anyone who has anxiety knows how easily like your anxious thoughts can spiral from like pretty reasonable and realistic anxiety into just ridiculous. And I got to like, I'm gonna lose my job. I'm gonna like, I was there. This flare is never gonna end, that sort of thing. And what my mentor did, which was amazing, she went through all of those fears with me and unpicked which ones were actually from my brain weasels, which it turns out was basically all of them. Just all of them, because I know that so one of the things I was stuck on is I've only got a month left, because we've now passed, because my deadline is the 21st. So in the middle of this, we passed 1 month remaining until my deadline. And so I was sat there going, a month is not much, a month is going to disappear, we know time in 2020 is weird, suddenly it's going to be the 21st of November and I won't have finished. And it's ridiculous, because a month is a lot of time. especially when we know that a lot of the way I write, both generally and with this specific project, is in bursts. Realistically, I need 2, maybe 3 more bursts, and then this is done. I mean, look, obviously there's editing and stuff, like, but in terms of like just producing the word count. And yeah, I had this milestone of being at 12,000 words by the end of this month. It's still possible, but I think it's a lot less likely now. But the thing is, I built into that timeline extra time in case this happened. I have already prepared for this. But there's something like, it's really easy to forget that. And also, I have this thing of not actually wanting to use that time. Like, well, I'll put an extra fortnight in so that I've got time to, you know, to be ill, because I probably will at some point, and lo and behold, I have. And then I don't want to use it, which is fucking pointless. So, yeah, I've got extra time and everything's going to be okay, but it took a lot of work to get me to feeling that, and obviously, so I've talked a lot about our struggle to articulate pain, generally in autopathography and in just life, to physicians, to in any circumstance, and one of the reasons it's quite hard to articulate is often we explain things. I'm saying that word again. Often we explain things in terms of the context. Like, if you're going to describe a person, it's very likely that at some point you're going to say, and their hair was blowing in the wind, or, you know, that sort of something that brings them into the world around them. You're never going to describe them as if they were in like a green room. You're always going to contextualize things, and sometimes when you're in pain, either the context isn't present because the pain is too loud, or the context is massively warped because pain like really messes with your ability to understand things, because you're panicking because you're in pain, and you feel like you shouldn't be in pain. And that's why I think that's one of the reasons that the sort of the Buddhist techniques and the mindfulness techniques around sitting in your pain and sitting with your pain and acknowledging your pain excuse me, that's why they try and do the work they do, which is to try and stop that fight against the pain itself. I was talking about this in my reading group, actually. I had there was a doctor there who does mindfulness work, and she was doing a lot of nodding when I was talking, so that was really nice. But yeah, so the good news is that I do feel better today. I am still not going to do very much. Basically, my mentor got me to a point where I was able to. I didn't do any studying apart from seeing her. I told all my team at work that I was in a flare and that I was not going to be around much yesterday or today, and I'm going to continue that. I've done the minimum of stuff that needs to be done each day, and then I'm leaving everything else. I did a little bit extra yesterday at one point because I was so excited that I could sit up. So yeah, I'm doing some things, but mostly I'm just trying to rest. My new desk chair arrives today, so hopefully that's really good timing and that I'll actually be able to sit in here a bit more comfortably, and continue to just not... Because the thing is, I always think of... I don't think of work or studying as things that require a great deal of effort because they just require sitting at a desk. Just. The amount of power that you expend in your brain thinking about things, and you always really forget that, and you think of that as a thing that isn't high effort, and that's wrong. It's really high effort to, sit and do whatever the reading or writing something or, creating something from scratch does take a lot of your brain power. I don't have any water in here. I'm gonna just mute this for a second so I can cough. Is that better? Oh, that's a bit better. I did not really think. I just sort of sat down and went, I'm gonna stream. And as it's Friday, it was I'm gonna stream so I can watch Critical Role, but also I wanted to stream before my chair got here. So that I'm not distracted by that. Hopefully I will have the energy, strength, ability to actually put it up. We'll see what happens. But yeah, so the thing is, that means that I have really not done very much studying this week. Obviously I did all the optional stuff, but I definitely am worried about that. I know that if I try and force myself to do it too soon, then I'm not going to be able to do anything at all. I know that it's important to say, I can't, when I need to take time to rest, I don't need to then immediately catch up with everything, because that's definitely a tendency I have, is to think that. And I've got other stuff going on next week, I've got my first therapy session next week, and it's annoying me that this hair is so low. Yeah, so I've got that. I have my supervision not next week but the week after, so I need to submit at the end of next week. So what I'm kind of hoping is not to finish everything by that point like I'd wanted to, but to finish section 2 of 3. And I think that's much more realistic because I know that the 2,000 words I've got in that section I definitely want to keep, and I know that the 2,000 words I've got remaining are all basically planned out. I've just got to write them. I know what's going into them. It's all mostly academic stuff, so actually it comes out quite easily. And it's more likely to come out right the first time, I think, is the best way to put it. My academic stuff needs a lot less editing than my fiction stuff does. But basically I've got some sections that are analysis to put in, and then I need to this gesture for those who are just listening. I'm just waving my hands around. It really doesn't have any actual sense to it. Yeah, so I also then need to put the character in that section who then weaves it all together, but I know which character it is and I'm excited to get to write about her again. So I think I'll write that section on Brink play and Risk role play, and then I will have fun moulding Theodosia into all of it. So I think I can do that in one day, possibly 2. It might be that I do the academic stuff on one day and mush His hand gesture's back again. Wish Theodos you're in on another day, but we'll see. Yeah, it's just, I think the one thing I'm aware of is that I always have a lot of fatigue after flares. I've definitely noticed that at least. It's weird because now that I'm seeing all of it through the lens of knowing what's wrong, I'm relating to the flare in a very different way, and noticing things that I wouldn't have noticed before, like that it ramped up, but actually started on the Monday, but then ramped up and the worst day was Wednesday and then dropped off relatively sharply, actually, given that at one point I was walking without my stick yesterday and stuff was actually working. But that only happened because I actually rested as well. So yeah, so I've got to work quite long hours this weekend. So I'm going to try and be good and sensible and do everything slowly, and make sure that that doesn't then just trigger another flare or extend this one or whatever. So yeah, it's weird that the best thing for me to do right now for my studying is nothing. It's particularly weird, but I think that's a reality of doing this with an illness that flares up awfully at points. So yeah, I don't actually have any other updates because I haven't done anything. So I'm gonna use one of my other vlog ideas, which I've had a pile of books on my desk for this reason. Because what I would like to do, so I'd like to tell you what I'm reading. I think that's interesting. And I get a lot of reading recommendations from listening to other people talk about what they're reading. So let's go in order of when I've read them. One of them I haven't actually read yet, I should say. So you know. So first of all is, there we go. So this is Radical Acceptance by Tara Brach, or Brach. I don't know how you pronounce her surname. It's B-R-A-C-H. This book is amazing. This book is the reason I went and got another therapist and got someone who was interested in Buddhist theory. I took 6 months to read this book because what kept happening was I'd read a bit and then I'd stop. And I wouldn't read it for a while. I think at first I struggled with her writing style. Not because it's bad, but just something about it found hard to get into. It didn't read as smoothly to me. But that definitely changed as I got further through the book. I got more used to it, and I can't tell you how it was weird. It just was. So she basically talks about dealing with mental illness and also dealing with any kind of trauma, whether it's sort of a loss or something like that, or even like a different illness. There's some people in there with eating disorders and things like that. And she talks about all of the different ways of dealing with it so she's a psychiatrist, but she's also a practicing Buddhist and specifically practices a Buddhist style of therapy, and it's so interesting. And basically what would happen is I wouldn't read it for a while, and then I'd read a chapter and it would be exactly the chapter I needed at that point in time. And it was just a really magical experience that I felt so, by the end I felt so connected to it, and I feel very grateful for this book. It reminded me a lot of the self-compassion book I read earlier this year, which unfortunately is downstairs. But I will try and remember to bring that up at another point. So that obviously is more of it's kind of a memoir, but a memoir from the point of a therapist. So it's about all of the people that she's worked with as examples to explain her thinking about therapy. This music is weird. Let's just do that. Let's just go to the next one. It's quite loud still. Let's turn it down a little bit more. Okay, so the next one is this. This is Super Sick by Alison Alexander. The subtitle is Making Peace with Chronic Illness. So Alexander has IBS, which you might have heard of in terms of being like a relatively mild illness, but you can have very, very severe versions of IBS. And it's just such a beautiful, it's a memoir, it's life writing, autopathography, which is autopathography is just a fancy word for autobiography of a person with an illness, because that's a bit long. Okay, no, this music is worse. There we go, that's better. Yeah, so it's just so lovely to read. It was like talking to a friend. So much of how she thinks about, obviously our illnesses are very different, but so much of how she thinks about and relates to her illness was so similar to my experience. And it was just like a hug. Something I found interesting is that, so she's a practicing Christian, and talks about that and talks about how that's informed her relationship with her illness and how her illness has problematized her relationship with her faith. And as someone who is agnostic but has a lot of respect for religion, it sounds like a really demeaning way of putting it. Religion has had a huge impact on my life, even though I don't personally have a faith. That's a better way to put it. So it was lovely to, like, I got a bit uncomfortable at first when she started talking about that, and I was like, oh no, is this going to go into something that I've felt so connected to this, am I now going to feel disconnected from it? But actually the way she explained it was so lovely, and so relatable even as someone who is agnostic, that it was really lovely in the end. So I would absolutely recommend it for anyone who has any kind of illness. You don't need to specifically have IBS in order to find this book like a lovely hug from someone who understands. And I think that's what it is, and I think that's really powerful. So now we're on to what I'm reading currently, and this text is tiny, so you may not be able to read this. Here we go. So this is a book that my supervisor mentioned, which is called The Body Keeps the Score: Mind, Brain and Body in the Transformation of Trauma. Now, in recommending this book, the first thing I need to say is that if you have experience of trauma, then it may be difficult reading for you, especially if you have experienced sexual assault, because Van der Kolk uses case studies, as many of these books do, and some of his case studies and the trauma his patients have been through, he describes not viciously but very explicitly, and I know from people I follow that that's been actively triggering for a lot of sexual assault victims. So just be careful reading this book if that's something that's gonna hurt you. Don't get hurt because of a book, even though it's really good. So I'm not very far in. What am I on? I've read 3 chapters. It's so interesting. It's so interesting. It is very hard going and heavy going, and that's why I've been reading it slowly. I've been reading it a chapter at a time. But to have someone articulate like how the history of psychiatry in the 20th century has weaved its way. So basically there was a point post-war where psychiatry did start going towards a very holistic look at the individual and understanding them in terms of the context of their trauma and of the origin of their illness and that sort of thing. And that then the pharmacological revolution happened, which is sort of in the 70s, 80s, which radically changed mental illness and the approach to it. And there was much less of an emphasis on talking therapy and much more of an emphasis on pharmacological intervention, so giving medicines and stuff like that. And the reason that was a revolution is because it genuinely was working. Like it's not to say that that medication doesn't work for mental illness at all, because it absolutely does. But the extreme emphasis that it went to not only meant that it was seen as a cure for all patients, and also that it was seen as a cure, it also then led to things like the commoditization of the pharmacological industry, which, as we know, is a huge problem worldwide, but especially in the US, and especially in acquiring medication for countries with lower GDP, because the American companies monopolize it and then charge a ridiculous amount for it, that sort of thing. We know it's become a hugely political thing now. Simultaneous to that, and sort of in relationship with that, the DSM started to be developed. And so Van der Kolk sort of talks about where post-war they were looking at understanding the symptoms that these, that especially veterans were having, that might have been described as schizophrenic because they involved hallucinations and things like that, actually then reliving their trauma. And he talks about the origin of where our diagnosis of PTSD comes from, and because it does come specifically from veterans, which is something I knew already, but it's really interesting hearing it, you know, from someone who was practicing it. And yeah, so where I've got up to, he's gone to the DSM is just being created, and it was so lovely to find that this is a psychiatrist who is also not very DSM positive, because he agrees with the same thing I do, and the same thing that people who are in MAD studies do, and quite a lot of people generally who study mental health now, which is that it tries to force people through hoops in a way that fails to accurately illustrate their actual mental illness, and that's very dangerous, because it can lead to, like, a veteran with PTSD being treated as if they had schizophrenia or something like that, or putting people into asylums, and they're not really called asylums anymore, but asylum equivalents, you might as well call them asylums because they're not that different in many ways, when they will actually, that will actually be more detrimental to them than a form of treatment that looks at the origin of their illness, because so much mental illness comes from trauma, even if it's not PTSD, and it's so interesting. It is very, very hard reading, and it is going to take me a while, so I'm not rushing myself on that, but I definitely recommend it if you are looking at all at mental illness or at trauma, or even just interested in the history of psychiatry, because actually it does a very good job at going through that. This next book, last book, I haven't started yet, so I don't know whether I'm going to recommend it to you or not. I think I probably am. So this is Disability Visibility, and it is a collection of essays from disabled people across the vast spectrum of disabilities, and I'm really excited to read it. It was I found it through one of the authors that has an essay in it, A.H. Riome, who I follow on Twitter, and if you've not read any of her writing, she's amazing. But yeah, this is all about showing the breadth of the disabled experience, the intersectionality of it. I'm really excited to read it. I've sort of been going, shall I just start? I know that Van der Kolk's book is going to take me a while. Should I just start reading this? I think I probably will. Once I feel, more able to do some reading. Put those back over there. But yeah, so that's the last couple of books I've read, and the couple of books that I'm reading right now. I have read some fiction books as well, but not that many of those. I go through a stage where I'm just reading all non-fiction, or I'm just reading all fiction. The last fiction book I read was amazing, and you should absolutely go and read it. And my mind is blanking on the title, which is embarrassing. damn it. I follow the author on Twitter. Hang on, we're gonna remember this. It's downstairs. I could just go and look and get it. This is so bad. I loved the book. It's so amazing. Legendborn. It's called Legendborn. There we go. I've got there. And I'm glad that I remembered it without having to fully look it up. It's by Tracy Deonn, which is Deonn. And it's absolutely so good. I read it almost in one go, which is quite common for me with fiction books. I think it's the best fiction book I've read this year. It is a modern retelling of Arthurian mythology, in a sense. I can't really say more than that because it will spoil it. The protagonist is a black teenager, and it doesn't shy away from the experience of being a black teenager in America at all. It does a really good job of articulating that in a way that makes you uncomfortable but also enjoyable to read. That sounds weird. It's really good. It's really good. And I ship my ship from it so hard. And it's sort of set up like there's going to be another one, but I don't know if there is, and if there isn't, and if my ship doesn't happen, then I'm going to be real sad. You can tell that the author loves fan fiction because you can, in a really positive way, in a really good way. But yeah, so that's what I'm reading. I'm now going to head off, and hopefully my chair will be here soon so I can set that up and sit in a slightly more comfortable position. But otherwise I'm going to continue resting today. Even though I'm starting to feel better, I think that's the really hard thing, is not immediately getting up and running off and doing things like I want to. I got so excited last night about the fact that I was able to fold some laundry. And actually feel like I'd done something. But then I hurt after I'd folded the laundry, so yeah, I just need one more day to finish recovering properly, especially because I know the weekend's going to be hard. And then we'll be gentle on Monday, and things will get there. Just have to trust myself and remember that, and tell my brain weasels to fuck off when they tell me otherwise.
I know it sounds silly, dear, but do it for me, please.
I love lo-fi. I really hate when lo-fi has voices in, because it really throws me. Okay, we can leave that there, and I'm going to see you all on Tuesday, and I hope you all have a lovely weekend. And thank you very much for coming.